We're going to start by my introducing the panelists, and then I'm going to ask them a question to get our questioning going. We do have mics on either side of the room, so if you have questions that you would like to ask for the panel members, please go to stand by one of the microphones, and then we'll recognize you to ask the questions. So I am a person who has been a lifelong advocate for early childhood. And I must say, I love my country. But I don't feel very proud of it after watching this. It really is staggering, some of the statistics that are brought home again about the way this country is dealing with the issues of early childhood and with the issues of family stress and things like family leave. So I think the video makes a very compelling case for the fact that we can't separate improving outcomes for children without thinking about improving outcomes for the adults who care for them. So I'm going to start by introducing our panelists and then asking them about some of their thoughts on that issue. To my immediate right is Lynn Johnson. Lynn and I have known each other for a while because I was working in the area of two-generation strategies for dealing with poverty in particular and breaking the intergenerational cycle of poverty. I have to look. I know Lynn, but I never know the specific title. Executive Director of Jefferson County's Human Services. Lynn is an innovator, an incredible visionary for how we could be delivering services differently to families. So we'll look forward to hearing from you. Lydia Prado and I also know each other well for many years of working together and sit on the Colorado Health Foundation's Philanthropy Committee together. Lydia is currently serving, and again, I'll check you, Vice President of Child and Family Services at the Mental Health Center of Denver. Lydia is a remarkable advocate for mental health for young children and also for looking at issues around toxic stress in families. So look forward to hearing from you. And next we have Stacy. And Stacy is now the Vice President of Quality Advancement for Qualistar. I have not had the opportunity to work as much with Stacy, but certainly we all know and love the work that Qualistar is doing to improve the quality of childcare, which continues to challenge us. Although we're seeing, I think, some very good progress at the state level. So thank you, Stacy, and look forward to that. Your comments. Brenda McChesney, am I saying that correctly? She's Director of Strengthening Families Programs and the co-chair of the National Network of Family Support and Strengthening Networks. Someone who obviously knows the area of how do we strengthen families in order to see better outcomes for the families and for the children. So thank you for being here. And finally, we have Bill Jager, who I'm sure all of you know. Bill and I've worked together in several ways on the Prenatal to Age 3 subcommittee. And Bill is a remarkable advocate who has been working closely with Colorado's legislators to educate them about some of the issues and was very instrumental last year in helping to make sure that we had some exciting reforms for our child care assistance program. So thank you, Bill. So let me start by asking, we know that this looking at the problems of children requires understanding the needs of families. What, from your perspective, would be the key investments that we need to be making in order to help solve the problems that we see displayed in this video? Lynn, would you like to go first?
And that's a great question. I think that's the question that we've all been asking for years, even on the video going back 20, 40 years, when we talk about investments in the lives of children. I am a complete two-generation advocate. So I don't think we invest in early childhood without investing in those parents. I've seen programs where even for your elementary age children, when they go into a program to help them with whatever issue, and we plop them right back into dysfunctional, toxic, traumatized homes, and then we say, oh, that program didn't work. So what I like to look at is for early childhood, that 0 to 3, that early vocabulary, that home nurse visitor getting into the home when someone's pregnant, helping moms with that toxic stress. The 0 to 5 concept doesn't end at 5. And I like to look at what we do with 0 to 5 is reflected in how our teenagers act. And so I think there's a direct correlation to some of the attachment and bonding and high-risk behaviors with our teens to 0 to 5. So when we say which one thing, I don't believe in any of that. I believe in that we have to have an investment across the board in a horizontal continuum that impacts our schools, our early childhood, our K through 12. Public education has to function for low-income and vulnerable families. We know that our adults, we have to have systems that work around the trauma of adulthood. Those kids that we're talking about that are traumatized today are the adults that I work with that are still traumatized now, and we're asking them to not be traumatized anymore while they raise their children. And so the adult brain work, the cognitive development, all of that is there is no one magic bullet. I always say a quality education plus opportunity from 0 to 21 makes all the difference, plus the adults. So that's a start. So I didn't answer your question because I don't think there is one such thing.
Lynn, though, I'd love to have you just describe a little piece of the work that you're doing with the Head Start program.
So we'll be here till midnight. What we're doing in Jefferson County is, one, what we saw on the video, and I heard the words, and I'm a government director, and I cringe when someone says government's not getting it right. So what we decided to do in Jefferson County was to become an incubator for change, and we decided to break every rule, find out what rules are happening, how do we tear down the red tape, what is it about the systems that don't work for my customers. I don't have clients, I have customers that come into my services. We have a Head Start school. From that Head Start school, we said, let's create the Jeffco Prosperity Project, one of our helpers right here. And from that project, we had families that can volunteer into the project. They determine the project. They determine the end goal. It's totally 2-generation. Last night, I had a meeting with my families that now, we've been doing this for 5 years, most are on the cliff. They started talking about the cliff effect and the things that they are doing, that the fear of moving from government assistance to being self-sufficient is a horrifying thing. Then you've also got that trauma, and we talk trauma brain with all of our families. They get this. They also get that they need a lot of help to move forward. But in just the last 6 months, I have 4 moms who just got their bachelor's degrees because we're doing business differently. They said to me, Lynn, I go into your Department of Human Services, quote unquote, and your services suck. So we said, then what do we do? They talked to my staff. In Jefferson County, we have same-day service. You get your food assistance, you get your Medicaid, you get your child care, you get it the same day. You walk out, you have what you need. That's not normal, but my staff have permission to break every rule if they have to. Just don't send me to Medicaid jail, and we will get it done. But you have to have that will to say the red tape is not what's going to keep you down. Every year at the legislature, we get more and more regulation. That regulation keeps people in poverty. I have a young woman who just is starting school at Metro. She's getting student loans. Because of student loans, she lost her food assistance. That is not revenue. So we need to talk, that's the kind of thing with Congress we need to talk about on student loans. It's not revenue. She should not have lost her food assistance. So we're now in there fighting on that piece. But then she shouldn't even have to get student loans if she's moving out of poverty. We should be able to find a way to help them get their education. So we have a school, we're tracking them to diploma, the kiddos to diploma, the parents to full self-sufficiency. We're building it as they tell us, and that's the short version.
All right, Lydia.
All right. Thanks, Ginger. In terms of the 2-generation strategy, absolutely. And I'm going to speak as a child clinical psychologist and somebody who has an infant mental health team and an early childhood team. And I think we really need to start thinking about what we're holding, and what we want to support is the relationship. Sometimes it's people focus on the little one, sometimes people focus on the adult. And what we focus on and find that is really healthy and protective is every decision we make and every intervention that is targeted is meant to support the relationship between the little one and their caregiver, because that is where it's immensely protective for a little one who, again, remember the neuroscience and the brain development. You have to learn how to turn off that HPA axis. You need to have soothing, comforting, sensitive interactions, and that only happens in relationship. Children and caregivers learn how to read each other, and there are things that we know, very discrete behaviors that we know if we help people, caregivers, learn in relationship and responsiveness, that's what supports healthy academic attainment. That's what we will see healthy adults in the long term. So we really, again, we want to think about a very strengths-based approach to supporting relationships overall, because I think what we are very good at is identifying deficits, and that's not particularly helpful to families who are struggling. They are doing a lot of things right. And I want to share an interaction I had with a mom I was talking to this morning. We were at our new site, and she was saying, I was telling her what I was going to be doing this afternoon, and I asked her what she wanted people to know. And she said, I want people to know that I understand I'm supposed to be feeding my children better. I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. I want them to know that I love my children and I am doing my absolute best. So I think the message there is that we are all I think what she's speaking to and what I hear from families is a lot of judgment and negative assessment, and we can all do better in that regard in terms of seeing, understanding the structures that are not helpful, and not to get away from a blaming perspective. Because after my 30 years of working with families, I still haven't had a parent tell me they want their child to do worse than they are. So, we need to change that perspective. And I've told Ginger this before, we need to go from a 2-generation strategy to a 3-generation strategy. We work with a number of people who with grandparents raising grandchildren, and they need very specific supports in their interactions, and how we can help them do what they were never expecting to do at this phase of their life. So that's my response to your question. Here you go.
Thank you. I agree with both of you wholeheartedly. So much I want to say from that video. I mean, it's jam-packed with so many messages, but I will focus it to one takeaway that I have most. It's really, if we're going to make a key investment, it's ultimately about funding. It's really about funding, and the funding, to get more of that, you have to prioritize that issue, right? So we have a lot of messages that we have to get to other people. So hello, choir. Welcome to this wonderful event. But, and I say that lightheartedly, how do we get the #1 voice in America, being corporate America, into our conversations? So part of what's not in your introduction of me is that I'm a mother of a 6-year-old, 3-year-old, and a 10-month-old. And I very much feel that pressure. And I'm resourced, and I know where to go if I need a resource. So if you can only imagine that, I mean, the fear that you speak to is such a powerful thing. How can we infuse that reality into the messages that we're saying? We all need to get corporate America into our conversations. I mean, I just think that is part of changing the conversation, changing the priority. And that door is going to be closed more often than not. Thank you so much for your time. That's just not where we are right now. So it's going to take a collective front. And part of my solution, I think, wherever we are plugged in, wherever we are in our organizations, if we're working directly with families or advocating for families, that we seek out different partners and we seek out different audiences. And we start telling the story. What strikes me here too, and maybe because I was just there 7 months ago, the mom who is dropping her 3-month-old at childcare, and she said, I'm just now to the point where I'm more human. I mean, you're not even sleeping. We forget how raw that moment is, that you don't even know where you are 3 months after you have a baby. And then you've got to deal with where they're going to go and is it the right place? And there's no time to think through that. And if you haven't really thought about that before you need that care, then you're really in a rut. So I think we have such powerful messages about you breaking the red tape and really thinking about that relationship, that we know it, and it's great for us to come together. I'm thrilled to be here. I think this is a great conversation. But where do we take it from now? So I'm very impressed, and I love the action that's on the back. It's something that we all can do. Take something that's inspired you from this video and talk to someone that you've never talked to specifically about these issues. So it can be your neighbor. It doesn't have to be at the Capitol. That's intimidating, and most of us don't do that. But it can be someone in our community. It can be a council member that's new to his seat, to her seat. Take advantage and really share our stories.
Thank you so much. Before I begin, I'd like to invite you to take a second and close your eyes. And I want you to envision and think for a moment about the last time you were in a situation where you had a problem that you couldn't fix on your own, or you needed help with resources to solve your problem. Perhaps a pipe burst in your home, or your car wouldn't start in the morning, or you were laid off from your position, had a loved one experiencing major health issues, or you were 2 eggs shy of your cake recipe just before your child's first birthday party. Maybe you experienced a positive stressor like marriage, a birth of a child, or entering into retirement. Think about this. Did you have people to turn to when you needed help? Did you feel equipped to manage the stress? Were you able to access the information and resources needed to improve your situation? I invite you to open your eyes. If you answered yes to all 3 of these questions, then you were filled with the protective factors that are known to increase family stability, to decrease toxic stress, and increase early childhood outcomes. Unfortunately for Ashley and her 2 daughters in this film, they weren't so lucky to be able to answer yes to the key protective factors that we know strengthen America's families. I've been asked today to speak on behalf of the Strengthening Families Network as the co-lead. I also serve as the Director of Strengthening Families Programs for the Family Resource Center Association and co-chair a national network of family support and strengthening organizations. And the role that we're infusing in Colorado, and I'm glad to say we have membership and desire for people to contribute to this idea of strengthening families in Colorado through building protective factors, is growing beyond our wild imagination. The protective factors were developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and they're research-based and evidence-informed, and they're known to, if infused, all 5 protective factors create the buffers to the toxic stress that are talked about in the video. Raise your hand if you've heard the protective factors before and you know the 5 key ones that there are. So just a few in the room, so this will be a great opportunity for you to think about how you can increase protective factors in your own life to create a ripple effect in your community, as well as look at how it's integrated into your programs and your agencies, your funding streams, and the policy implications that there exist. So the first is parental resilience, and this is the ability to be strong and flexible. We saw this as a theme throughout the video, that the parents who had stress resulted in children having stress. How many of your programs really look to build those types of key relationship building skills, stress reduction skills for the parents and the families that you interact with? The second protective factor is social connections. And this just boils down to parents need friends. When I moved to Southern Colorado, coming from California, I had an 11-month-old child, and I moved to a town of 800. And I come from a very large city in California, so it was a major shock to my system. I couldn't find other parents with small children. I didn't know anyone in the community. I didn't know where I could find a parenting group. It took 2 months to discover there was one 45 minutes away. And it was a family resource center, fortunately, so it was my earliest interaction with that type of support. And what I recognized was, without a support network, you're much less willing to go out and seek the help that you need, to lean on friends in times of need, to look for concrete supports. Each of the protective factors that exist here, you feel more isolated, and in isolation comes a ripple of effect that can lead to the toxic stress that was discussed. The third protective factor is concrete supports in times of need. And this boils down to also, we all need help sometimes. As you were thinking back about the times that you may have experienced a crisis or had your car not start in the morning, there was someone that we were able to lean on, a support that we were able to access, and it's critical to think about that in implication to the programs that we offer. The fourth is knowledge of parenting and child development. Parents need to know how children grow. How are we supporting that type of access to education and early child development resources within our communities? And the fifth is social and emotional competence of children. And so parents need to help children to interact and communicate well. When we integrate these protective factors, it's important to think about the quality of work that we're doing it. To just say that we have a parenting education class is a great thing, but is that parenting education class scheduled at the time that parents can access it? Is it scheduled in a location that's easily accessible via transportation? And is it really in a topic that's meeting the need of the families? I think additionally, when you have a parent education class, when you're looking at these protective factors and quality implementation of it, it's critical to look at, are you building the supports for families to be able to connect with other families through your programs? So I definitely have seen through the Family Resource Centers, our models, and other family strengthening organizations, these protective factors put into place. And in Colorado right now, we're working to infuse quality standards so that they can deepen the protective factors as well as the family support principles so that we can all have a quality practice in terms of implementation and have a common language and approach. And I appreciate the time to talk about it today.
Thanks. Before I kind of jumping in and trying to respond to the specific question, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate Lydia's comment about a strengths-based approach to this work. And that's a concept I became familiar with. My wife is an LCSW graduate of DU, and I'm pretty sure that's how she gets me to do anything, is a strengths-based approach. And so with that in mind, I would just sort of highlight sort of a strengths-based perspective on where we are in early childhood. I think that there are a lot of takeaways from this film that leave us feeling a sense of we have so much to do. When it comes from a perspective of, I mean, the film takes on income inequality and parent leave and childcare and pre-K access and parent support. It's an elephant we have to eat one bite at a time. But I would also just sort of highlight that we are in the early childhood moment right now. That we have had a perspective on two generation for many, many years. And I think Lynn and Lydia and Brenda can speak to the importance of sort of supporting the adult and the value that that has. I think any success that we have will attack both generations or multiple generations. But I would just highlight the tremendous opportunity we have to make sure that the youngest in that generational approach have their voice heard, and the investments that we target benefit those young children. The robust discussion about brain science and the impact that that's having on informing public policy. The realities that children are experiencing, the discussion about adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress. I mean, really, it is a tremendous moment. And we've seen, from a public policy perspective, people seize on that moment in many ways in this state and around the country. We have seen our state legislature expand access to early learning by 8,200 slots over the last couple of years. I see former Senator Hudak here, and thanks in no small part to her and her leadership. We've doubled almost our state investment in our child care assistance program. We've instituted a series of strategies to try to support families, and yet we have huge unmet need. And I think that is the takeaway that makes it so difficult. We have 11,000 4-year-olds with no access to pre-K of any kind. We have 76,000 children under the age of 6 living in poverty. Child care assistance program serves about 10,000 kids each day. We are having this discussion on the same day that the legislature is debating a bill over whether or not to study, not to implement, but to study paid family medical leave. And reality is that bill will die. So that is the reality that we face. And so how do we seize on the early childhood moment to elevate our voices in support of young children? And I would say it's not from an ideological, for the most part, opposition to taking on that investment. More than anything else, it's that we have not had a collective narrative about the importance of investing in the early years the way that we've needed to statewide. And that is our challenge that I think is in front of us. We look at our state legislature, term limited, citizen legislators who make $30,000 a year. That means this year, 54 of our 100 state legislators are in their seat that they're currently sitting in for less than 2 years. And we are asking them to vote on 600 to 700 bills each session, from everything from water to natural gas to oil to fracking to this to that. And we say, oh yeah, pre-K. Oh yeah, child care. Oh yeah, paid family medical leave. And so we need to seize on this moment and emphasize the multi-generation approach. But I think also elevate the youngest in that generational strategy as this being their time and our opportunity to elevate that experience.
I'd like to invite anyone who has a question to begin moving towards the microphones, but while we're waiting for people to get to the microphones, Stacy brought this up, but I think everyone's brought this up in a different way. We have been advocating for many of these things, I know, for most of my life. And we've made progress, but we haven't made enough progress. What do we need to do differently to get the attention of the folks who will help us with funding, the folks who will help us with new and innovative thinking about service delivery? How do we bring a more creative approach? Because I think we've been trying, but obviously if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same results. I can't remember who said that, but I think it's really true. So what is it that needs to be different? Bill, I think that one's also.
We're all on edge. I think the short answer, it has worked, right? That we are even having this discussion and debate is a tribute to the people who've made this their life's passion and their career. And the fact that, again, this moment I feel like is in front of us is a acknowledgement that that strategy has worked. I think the biggest challenge is the group, the entity that has the most power in my mind at the legislature. Certainly there's a role, and Rob Duggar has opinions about business. I think it's parents. When we talk about policies related to early childhood or K-12 or whatever it might be, they're sort of the usual suspects. But when parents elevate their voices in support of children and strategies that will support them, we see an impact. The challenge is the parents who are most likely to benefit from the investments and the supports that we need to make are least well equipped and least have the time and resources and social capital to be able to make that case. And so I think part of our work going forward needs to be to thinking about whatever profession we're in, if we are working with families and children, how do we build advocacy into that work as an element of a long-term strategy?
And if I may, to build on that too, I think PBS did it right. I mean, they've got other people telling our story. You've got a doctor or a professor, and how much do you love the pediatrician at the very beginning? So articulate, so approachable, she gets it. I mean, how inspiring is that? We need more pediatricians doing that, and we can do that through, I'm a parent in a pediatrician's office. We can do that in our everyday work as well. But thinking a little bit outside the box about who we're talking to. And we have a hedge fund manager. That's awesome. We need to be taking that. Unfortunately, I say, they're mostly older white men. If we could infuse a little bit more of, what the field looks like and who is in the field, I think our message probably could be a little bit powerful. But if Dr. Shonkoff wants to talk about issues that impact our work, he can do that all day. So I'm not discouraging that. But how can we broaden that? I think that's why I'm so inspired about the pediatrician in the beginning. She's seeing families in a very different way than maybe we do working with young children, but how powerful is that? So I think PBS, I think this is just a wonderful example of diversifying that message.
I think one thing, I love what you just said, Bill. Parenting is not partisan. And so the parents do have a critical piece at the Capitol, wherever we go. And then the corporate world and the business world, I can speak just for what's happened with us in Jefferson County, is that during the worst of economic times, we had a 350% increase in demand for all of our services, especially the early child care work. And we started saying, oh my gosh, we can't do this without the business community. And so having the communication with a business community that is no longer making a profit, they're laying people off just to make payroll. And we started saying, I run a workforce center. We could probably help you with salaries. If you would hire my individuals on TANF, my moms, can you help with this family piece? And they started listening, and they did what we call the Add One campaign. I said, we have 26,000 businesses in Jeffco. If you all add one, rather than waiting for the economy to turn, you will turn it yourselves. So we started the Add One campaign, and businesses started pledging to add 1, add 20, add 30, and it started happening. So before the economy turned, Jefferson County's numbers had already turned. But that was a human service initiative that was with the businesses in the corporate world. The second piece that we did is, well, the first thing they said is, Lynn, every time you come to us, you're asking for money. That's probably true. But on the other side of it was, they said, but can you ask us for something else? Well, I'm not shy, right? So I did. I said, will you hire my individuals that have not been in the workforce before, and I will case manage them with you so that you have a great work ethic, that you have someone showing up. But if you have a single mom with 6 kids, can we talk about how you adjust your work times? Can we talk about how you require 8 hours, but they need to take the child to a medical center? Can we talk about that? They are having those conversations. I'm not saying to them, you guys never do this, and you've got a history of being bad, and you don't team, and you don't partner, and all you care about is, I just went in and said, can you help? We have a great team in Jefferson County. Would you want to play? And they're saying yes. I haven't had anybody say no yet, but we're going there. But another classic example, we had a young woman who has 2 kids, just got out of domestic violence. They're in my project, and I'm real big about truancy. I'm always like, they have to have their butts in the seats. And so this mom was walking her kids 3 miles each way to go to school because Lynn said they can't be truant. So we go through all of this, call the school district, get them on the buses and make sure that they can, because they were falling asleep in school, get the bus routes changed. Then she gets her first livable wage job. She's still struggling with some of the impacts of domestic violence, so excited about her first day at work, and her car won't start. And life happens, right? So we're called pit bulls. We get on the phone, start calling auto mechanics. I don't know what it's going to take to fix this car, but we need to get her a vehicle. And we called and we told them about the Prosperity Project. We told them about what we're doing for families and children and how these kids have to have a way to get back and forth to school. And can you fix this car? And he said, so how much money do you have? I said, well, we don't have any money. And he said, you really have no money? No, we don't have any money. He said, but you want me to fix the car? Oh, yeah, we do. And then we have about 20 more behind that. But he said, so you want us to do for this woman what people used to do in community a long time ago? We said, yes. And he said, bring it in. He's now served 5 cars for us so far. Tilden Auto Body, take your cars in. But then I said, you can't service all the cars for all my families. Transportation is an issue for our young, this impacts the kids. So we now have a complete collaboration of auto mechanics and auto body shops in Jeffco that we are meeting regularly, and they are coming up with ways to ensure guaranteed transportation for families. Businesses will come to the table. It's how you do the ask. I joke that I speak both Republican and Democrat. It's really powerful. But you have to be willing to go past the issue. Every business person is a parent, most likely. Everybody truly do care about kids if you present it in the way that it makes a difference. So I think the messaging, and Bill, you do this so well at the Capitol, is critical. We have to change the message. Instead of the attack of how America's not doing it, it's, okay, America, it's time to step up. Do you want to play? And I think people will come to the table.
Well, Lynn is a force of nature, as you can tell, and I hope some of you will follow up with her. And I noticed that we had one question, and do we have time for just one? Okay. All right, please share with us your question.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Bridget Kamenetsky. I work with 9 to 5. We work to strengthen the lives of low-wage women to create better workplace policies. And it was definitely strongly heard in the video that we need paid time off from work, paid maternity leave, and better policies for parents in order to make our children thrive. And so I just wanted to hear from, it sounds like most of you are all children's advocates. And so I want to hear from you all what you are doing to really push, to really make sure that in order to, the importance of supporting parents. 9 to 5 is leading a campaign this year called the Family Act, which would create paid time off from work in the case of having a baby or in the case of a long-term illness, which is really important. I hear from many moms all the time where they're not even able, they have to go to work within days of having a child because they can't afford to miss 1 day's worth of pay. Or I hear from parents that are working 2 jobs, and they don't get to have that time. So no matter how much parenting, teaching, education we give to parents, there's just not that time, or there's not the money coming in to afford the food or the childcare that's needed to really have their kids thrive. So just wanted to hear from all of your perspectives as childcare advocates, how can we really try to build that more connection of supporting parents?
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
and we'll respond relatively briefly, only because I want to respect people's time. So, any thoughts?
This isn't an answer, Bridget, to your question, but I think it's a really good one. I run an agency with 90% females. And so as a executive, I do everything I can to support my workers. At the same time, I'm going to give a question back because I really don't have an answer for this. In my just child abuse and neglect and adult protection units where they have to go out immediately on calls, I have about 20 women off on maternity leave at any given time. If I were to give paid time off, which I try really hard to do, but I have to replace them or we don't go out on an abuse call. So how do we figure out that double workload to be able to do this right? Because none of that was on the film. They talk about we need to do it, but if I have to have 50 additional staff working, I'm fine with that, but then do I lay them off when the other person comes back? So we need to figure out those details to give corporate America and to give people that are in CEO positions to say it is workable and here's how you can do it. Because once I bring in a temporary staff as a backup, they want that job, especially if they've done it for 6 months. We have kids running around the agency all the time. We are very family friendly, but when it comes to that go out on an abuse call or go out on an adult protection or deal with a poverty issue, you don't say wait 3 months until someone comes back. So we need the solutions back too, and I think that would be, Bill, that would be a great work group for us to figure out how to do it. Then we offer the solution. But right now it's just, why don't you do it? And I'm sitting here myself saying, I have a budget that comes from the state and they don't pay for double staff. So what do I do?
And I can speak to answering it on a systems approach from the Family Support and Strengthening National Movement. In our field, we're givers. We give a lot. We look for opportunities to help, and often they are long hours and arduous times where we can tend to take home that level of stress or stories from the families that we work with. And as part of the quality standards for family strengthening and support, one of the main areas of emphasis is family-centeredness. And it's not only family-centeredness of having a mindfulness-based approach to your own healthfulness and stress reduction and trying to figure out the balance in your personal professional life, but also encouraging agencies to look at their own practices and policies on how do they implement the same thoughtfulness that they have for how they support families with their own staff who are families. So looking at exactly what was referenced, looking at the time of the day that employees can work and can you bring your children to work or certain holiday schedules, et cetera. So trying to improve quality practice by practicing what we preach at the agency level.